here's another worksheet of factoring when the a, the number in front of the first whatever squared, is larger than 1. So here we have some examples. The 7m squared, so a is 7, not 1, plus 6m minus 1. I'm going to show you two ways. First way is this, which should look familiar to all you. Remember, this top spot in this x is the a x squared, or a whatever squared, times the c. So this would be negative 7m squared. And then the bottom part is just the middle term, that 6m. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for two numbers to multiply to give me that top number, but add together to give me the bottom number. So in other words, I need two things that multiply together to give me negative 7m squared, but add together to give me 6m. And also when we're filling this in, we always just put the first term here, 7m squared, and the very last term, or the c value there. If I have two things that multiply together to give me 7m's, there's not a lot of choices here. The only factors of 7 are 1 and 7. So I need a 7 and a 1. This tells me that I need to add them together to be positive 7, or excuse me, positive 6. To do that, I need the 1 to be negative, because 7 plus negative 1 equals 6. So I'm going to take these two values and put them here. So I would have a 7m in this spot and a negative 1m or a negative m in this spot. And all I do is put these two answers in the last two squares. All right, now we go about filling out the outside of the box like we've done before. But what I do is I look for what is the greatest factor of those two things, 7m squared and 7m, and it would be just a 7m. So then I look the other way and I decide, if I go this way, what's the common factor there? Or another thing to think about is, what do I need to multiply this 7m by to get 7m squared? And it would just be an m. So this m times the 7m gives me the 7m squared in the corner of the box. Then I have this 7m again times something here to give me 7m. Well, 7m times 1 gives me 7m. And then I need 1 times this number to give me this negative 1. And that would just be a negative 1. And I can double check to make sure negative 1 times m is negative m, which it is. So my two factors are m. Since there's nothing in front of the 1, it's a positive, plus 1 from here, and 7m minus 1 from the bottom of the box. So that's one way of doing it. I'm going to erase it all. The other way of doing it is called factor by grouping. And what we do is, again, we multiply those two together. And I start by writing 7m squared. And I have to just think of that negative 7m and how I can group them together. So again, I want something times something to equal negative 7m squared, and something plus something to equal 6m. And I know it's going to be, again, negative 1 and 7. So negative 1 and 7, negative 1 times 7. So when I'm factoring by grouping, I'm going to drag this down a little bit here. 7m squared, I'm going to pick the one that is that I can take something out of with the 7. So it's going to be 7m squared. I would say plus 7m minus 1m minus 1. Now really, that is just rewriting that into things that I like. And now I look at this half and I pick what my common factor is and I factor it out. So I'm going to take out a 7m. And if I do that, I still have a m plus 1. And then I look at the back two numbers, these two, and I look to see what I can factor out. Well, I can take out a minus 1, and if I do that, I have positive m plus 1. Now, if I look, I can factor m plus 1 out of both of these. So if I take a m plus 1 out, if I take it out of here, I have a 7m left. If I take it out of here, I have the minus 1. So my two factors would be m plus 1 times 7m minus 1, which is what we got the other way too. All right, so next problem. Let me erase that one. If we're doing it by grouping, again, I would take this. Either way, we're going to take those two terms and multiply them together. And actually, even we could just think of it as this, we still use this 21k squared in the top, because 7 times 3 is 21, and then negative 10k this way. Two things that multiply together to give me a positive 21k. Either both have to be positive or both have to be negative to multiply together and give me a positive number. If I want them to add up to give me a negative 10, they both have to be negative then. And it would be negative 7k and negative 3k. So again, I'm going to factor by grouping. So I'm going to start by 3k squared. And out of these two, the one that would go with it best would be the minus the 3k. Then I would have minus the 7k, I'll write the other one, and then plus 7. So again, this adds up to give me that negative 10k. So now I have to figure out what's my common factor between these two. And I can take a 3k out. And if I do, I'm still going to have a k minus 1. And now if I look at the other two terms, and I want to factor something out, those two I can take out a minus 7, and if I do, I get a k plus, excuse me, a k, if I take out a negative 7, I have a k minus, no, minus 1. Because if I just look again, that's negative 7 times k, negative 7k, negative 7 times negative 1, positive 7. So anyway, when you're doing factor by grouping, you always have to have something that's exactly the same that you're factoring in both of them, that you end up with it in both of them. And that's what we're going to start with, is k minus 1. And then we just group the other things that are left on the outside, because we took a k minus 1 out of each, and it leaves us with a 3k minus 7. Now, if we wanted to go back to up here, we would have done that part exactly the same, right? So all we need to do is do this. This is a 3k squared. This would be a 7. We came up with negative 7k and negative 3k. And it's very similar in the fact that I'm looking for what do those two have in common. The greatest common factor is a 3k. And if that's a 3k, I know 3k times k will give me the 3k squared. Then k times negative 7 will give me this negative 7k. And then negative 7, oops, sorry, negative 7 times 7 would, sorry, negative 7 times negative 1 would give me the 7k. Or this negative 1 times 3k gives me this negative 3k. So my factors again, 3k minus 7 and k minus 1. All right. Let's see. I should have said it in the first place. Always first start out by seeing if there's a common factor. And in this case, 5 does not go into 81 or 36, so the answer is no. The problem with factoring this way is you end up with really big numbers sometimes. So again, this is my 5x squared. Here's a negative 81. On the sides, I take negative 81 times 5, which is negative 405. And at the bottom goes this negative 36x, and then boy, we start thinking of factors of 405. 1 and 405, 2, 3 does it, 3 goes in there, because 5 and 4 is 9, so 405 divided by 3 is 135. Well, that's not going to work, that doesn't add up to 36. We said 5 and 81, again, don't add up to 36, so I need bigger than 5. So I just start doing 405 divided by numbers, 15 and 27 go. But again, that does not get me to the 405, or excuse me, to the negative 36 that I need. So 405 divided by, I just am trying some numbers. Oh, it looks like 45 and 9. I can use those. So if I need to end up with negative 36x, the 45 has to be the negative, and this would be the 9x. If I were doing factor by grouping, right here I would rewrite and I would say 5x squared. I'm going to pick those out of these two, which one goes with 5 best. It would be the negative 45x, and then it'd be plus 9x, and then minus 81. Again, those two numbers are just what gets me that negative 36. Now I look for common factors between these two terms, and I can take out a 5x, and I'm left with a x minus 9, and then plus, I can take out a 9x out of the back. Let me change colors here. Out of those, I can take a 9 out, and I get x minus 9 match. So I'm going to factor out a x minus 9. And then what do I have left if I factor that out? Well, I have this 5x plus 9. So those are my two factors. If we want to do it this way, we put a negative 45x here and a 9x there, and I'm looking for common factors one way or the other. If I do it this way, I'm just going to have an x here, which means this has to be the 5x. 5x times something is negative 45x, and that'd be negative 9. Negative 9 times something equals negative 81. Well, that'd be a positive 9. So my factors this way are going to be the same. This 5x plus 9, and then this x minus 9. So I still get the same answers, 5x plus 9 and x minus 9. I just get them in a slightly different way. All right. Don't forget, sometimes you get ones that would be like this number 7 here. If I look at this, these two multiplied together would be 400k squared, and then I have 8k the other way. And I should say 5, 8, and 80 do not have a common factor because 5 doesn't go into 8. So let's just talk about what my options are. I have 1 and 400. Well, they're not going to add up to give me 8. 2 and 200. Obviously, I'm going to need numbers that are closer together in size if they're going to add up to be 8, but that's not even close because I can't have anything in the hundreds. So let's say 40 goes in there 10 times, still doesn't add up to be 8. 400 divided by 50, 50 and 8, 400 divided by 80 is 5. If you see none of these, because both of them are going to be positive factors, none of them are going to add up to be 8. They're all going to be way too big. So this actually is going to be unfactorable. And that is an acceptable answer, unfactorable. It's not going to happen very often. I guarantee you on worksheets that I give you, it will not happen more than once. Or on the quiz, if I give it to you, it will not happen more than once. because I want to see if you can factor. So giving you a whole bunch that are unfactorable wouldn't make sense. So again, usually you won't have unfactorable. It just happens occasionally. So first up, always see if they have a common factor. Do these have a common factor? No. This is going to be the last one we do. So if we take 8 times 5 is 40. So this is going to be our 40x squared. And then I need a negative 14x here. So if we're factoring by grouping, if we're factoring, I know they have to add up to give me negative 14, but multiply to give me to positive 40x squared. So again, if they multiply together to give me positive 40x squared, they either both have to be positive or they both have to be negative. They're going to add up to give me a negative, means they both have to be negative. So I know it's going to be negative 4x and negative 10x. Add to give me negative 14, multiply together to give me positive 40. So I will start, if I do factor by grouping, I'm going to start with this 5x squared. I look at these two, which one goes better with the 5x squared? What would be the minus the 10x, and then minus 4x, the next term, and then plus 8 from here. Again, this would be our negative 14x right here. So I'm just rewriting that original equation, but I'm breaking that negative 14x, in this case, into negative 10x and negative 4. And then I'm going to find common factors. Between those two, I can take out a 5x, and if I do, I get x minus 2. And between these two, I can take out a negative 4, and if I do, I get an x minus 2. And these should be and are exactly the same. So if I have those two that are exactly the same, I can factor one of them out. X minus 2 I'm going to factor out. If I take it out of this term, I just have 5x left. If I take it out of this term, I have minus 4 left. So there's my two factored by grouping. If we're going to use the box, excuse me, again, 5x squared goes here, the 8 goes there, negative 4x and negative 10x. Hold on. Let me make that a little bit nicer. All right, so common factors this way. Just an x, right? So this would be x, which makes this have to be a 5x. This is a 5x, that times that gives me negative 10x, well, it's going to be a minus 2. If this is negative, which leaves me for this spot, so if I look at this, I have x times this to give me negative 4x, it's got to be negative 4. So right here, my 5x minus 4, which is there, and my x minus 2, if I get my pen to right, is right there. So those are my two terms, x minus 2 and 5x minus 4. All right, hopefully this helped.